Well, welcome back, guys. It is the final episode of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the final one ever. It is a pretty sad moment. I do think this finale was much better than the one that was intended to be the series finale. Talking about the finale of Season 5 over here. I know there are a lot of objections to certain things, like, oh, they did not tie to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, I'd say I don't really care about the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this point in terms of tie-ins to the series or the series tying into it. Because in the end, this series has got its own story, it's got to wrap it up the right way. I'd prefer a good ending for the final season of the series, a good series finale, story-wise, over a tie-in that compromises the story. And this is exactly what we got at the end over here. This is practically the best series finale that I've watched in so many years. So yeah, I don't care about tie-ins to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and you shouldn't either. You should enjoy the story for a beginning, a middle, and an end, not because of its relationship to another story that's not really part of it for that matter. But we've got a lot ahead of us, so let's get started right away. We've got the titles of the episode, What We're Fighting For, that's the title of episode 13, and The End Is at Hand, that's the title of episode 12. Now, The End Is at Hand does refer to a lot of things. Number one, it refers to the end of this team together, as one team. As opposed to what a lot of people thought, this was not the end of this team because one of them dies or because they get separated across timelines or because, oh, this is the end of them as a S.H.I.E.L.D. team because they're gonna end up becoming a S.W.O.R.D. team. That did not really happen. It was just about them being in the same room at the same time for one last time, going on one last mission together. Because even when they meet at the end of the finale, when we're thinking, oh, but they said they're never going to be in the same room again, they're not actually meeting physically, but rather as holograms. So this explains that. They're never going to be in the same place. But when it comes to the title of this first hour, there's also number 2, Sybil's thoughts that the end is at hand for S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, this is based on Sybil's evaluation, determination of the probability of them never again being in one room to be 100%. That makes her think that this means that they're winning. So at that point, she is under the illusion that the end is at hand for S.H.I.E.L.D. Number 3, there is the fact that this title kind of complements the title of the finale of Season 5, The End. They definitely could not use that title again, so right now they're using a different title that kind of insinuates the same. And finally, there is number 4, The End Is at Hand. That refers to the audience. This is the last time we're watching this amazing cast, these amazing characters on one of these episodes of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So it is the end of the series, not just for the characters, not just for the cast, but also for the audience. But now the title of the second hour of the finale, What We're Fighting For. Now there's the obvious bit, they're fighting for the safety of all timelines, both timelines, the one they return to and the one they leave. That's why they pretty much got the Chronicoms back with them in order to defeat them in their own timeline. But there is also the part that refers to the conversation that Daisy had with Mac on last week's episode. They're fighting for one another, their family, they're fighting for their families as well. Like in the case of Fitz and Simmons, they're fighting for their daughter. She's their everything, she's what they've been fighting for. But that said though, let's get into deeper detail. So first and foremost, we've got that conversation going on board of the Quinjet. Daniel Sousa is referring to those lasers as space lasers, while Daisy responds, no, just lasers that happen to be in space. So pretty much this is all about a trend with Daniel Sousa throughout this episode. You've got the Peachy bit, you've got Daisy telling this story about how she got him to watch E.T. and how he basically bawled towards the end of the movie. This is basically a whole new world for Daniel Sousa. His terminology is different, the words he's using are different, and everything, including E.T., is pretty much a new experience for him. Now right after that, you've got Mac's nice flying Tremors, and then Sousa's response, I thought it was Quake. That's pretty much a reference to that funny conversation on last week's episode, but also the very first time in a very long while that Mac is called Daisy Tremors. So yeah, kind of a nostalgic callback. Now all of this leads into the Quinjet docking into the Zephyr and then the Zephyr being beamed up to the Chronicom ship. So the next thing we're watching the Chronicom ship, we're seeing Sybil is back on board of the Chronicom ship. This is not the same Sybil that we've been watching since the beginning of the season. She's not been rebuilt, but this is rather the Sybil of this other timeline. she's been updated with this information, but you could tell based on that conversation about moving to this other timeline, when she's talking to Nathaniel about the original timeline and talking about those Chronicom hunters that have been mobilized from that other timeline, like it's not her original timeline. The Sybil we've been meeting since the beginning of the season belonged in that original timeline though. But in the middle of all of this, there is the talk about the Lighthouse being built to withstand any attack, and that kind of matches with the events of Season 5. The attack of the Confederacy, the menu that popped up, the wrong choice that Coulson made. It's been built that way. Would have been fun though if they tried to attack it, that menu popped up, Rick Stoner popped up, and Coulson made the right choice this time. But speaking of the Lighthouse though, we've got Mace Powers in action again on this episode. She's feeling the lost lives from all the S.H.I.E.L.D. bases. There are a lot of things that Mace Powers do bring to the table on this episode. For one thing, she's changed. That's the conversation that she does have with Coulson. He's happy with the new people that they've become, so she's made her peace with being the cavalry, being called the cavalry. She even calls herself that, which in turn means that she's made her peace with that situation in Bahrain, that little girl from years ago. There's the fact that it also brought her more emotion, because you do notice that when Daisy comments about it, when Daisy comes back from space, May kind of goes in to hug her. But there's finally the biggest part, the reason they were there all along from the beginning of the season. Using the powers of Korra, they kind of send a signal back to the Lighthouse, and that signal is to give another side to May's powers. So instead of just being empathetic, she's actually giving away empathy. Now, I'm not gonna talk about this part so much, the part out of the sneak peek that we got for the episode, but just to address it real quick over here, number one, I found that scene once again very funny. The part about Daisy talking about going in to save Simmons, but then Mac reminds her of Deke, and then she goes, sure. I think that's meant to be an extension of what they do in real life, like the actors together with Jeff Ward since he joined the series, like you're the new guy, we're gonna give you shit. Of course, all of it is in good fun and as some kind of joking. But number two, we've got them coming to the conclusion that Korra is up there. They don't know how, they don't think of Garett, which is kind of a little bit weird, but nonetheless, they do know that she is up there. And finally, number three, there is the Daisy Sousa kiss, and it is his first kiss with her from his perspective, but more importantly, the situation was completely reversed. Like, he initiated the kiss, the line that she said he said, and the line that he said in the first situation, she said in this one. So I'd say really clever touch over here. But jumping back though to the Lighthouse, we've got Garett in the Lighthouse fixing explosives. We've got Coulson being more that tech guy that he was in last week's episode. Very amazing in the absence of Deke, Fitz, and Simmons that they kind of found a way to give Coulson that, being code for that 1 year, being max headroom. We've got the inhibitor out of Season 2, the one they ended up using on Garett over here, and it comes with a lot of references. First of all, as Coulson works on building it, as he talks about it, they talk about the fact that this piece of tech is the one that they used on Gordon, so a reference to Season 2, the finale, if I remember correctly, of Season 2. There's a reference to the original Coulson losing his arm over that situation, which is also a reference to the very same episode. But I thought the most subtle yet the biggest of all of these references is it is being used on Garett, because in the end, this timeline's version of Garett has got the powers of this timeline's version of Gordon. But all of this though does lead into Garett realizing that Nathaniel doesn't really care for him, that he's not willing to help him, that all that matters to him is his own plans, and that also leads him to try to help Team S.H.I.E.L.D., ending up teleporting them out of the Lighthouse to the Speakeasy before the first hour of the finale is over. The man does as well meet his end being shot by this lady agent who I believe deeply is actually Victoria Hand. Gonna talk about that in a moment though. But before I move on though, Garett was definitely a cheesy guy, this younger version of Garett, and I didn't like him at first, but I did finally start liking him on this episode, like he just started to grow on me right when he died, so rest in pieces Garett. But alright, let's jump back to that team in space. Now we've got Sybil's announcement of the war being over and done with. She mentions the destruction of every S.H.I.E.L.D. base. She does mention the Lighthouse. She doesn't realize at that point that the Lighthouse has not been destroyed. All of that, including the idea that he might have lost everyone he cares for, his S.H.I.E.L.D. family, Yo-Yo more importantly, gets Mac all angry, all worked up, and he decides, okay, let's make some noise. Let's try to help Daisy get Simmons and Deke back. Now that is also when we get to see the Thunderstick, the weapon out of Season 1, out of the 084 episode, the second episode of the series, the episode with the temple, and then also out of a later episode on the season when Coulson used it. The first time was actually Grant Ward. The other interesting part about this is that was the very first time we heard the code 084, the first time we've heard of a 084 as well, and then on this episode we do get a 084 later on. So in terms of Easter eggs and references, they've really done a great job, like matching everything up throughout the entire episode, and not just through a certain moment. But okay though, we've also got Nathaniel talking to Cora, lying to her about her mother and then about Daisy. There's him telling her that in her original timeline, she quaked the planet, she quaked Earth, she broke it apart, and that's pretty much the Destroyer of the World trope out of Season 5, the lie out of Season 5. We've got Deke trying to remind Jemma of people and stuff. The thing about this is I did state on last week's episode, she did not just forget about Fitz, she forgot about everyone. Now everyone was like, okay, but she went to help Deke. Yes, there are two people who have been abducted, she doesn't know what's going on, but it still does make sense to go help that other guy that's been abducted just like her. They're the same kind of victim. Now this does get reflected in her not remembering Daisy later on, in her not remembering any other members of the team as soon as they make it back to Earth. Now Sybil thinks the way to extract the information from Simmons or to have Simmons lead her to Fitz is to allow Daisy to get to Simmons. Nathaniel thinks that Daisy has gotta die, so he fills Cora's head with those lies that I talked about earlier and sends her off to fight Daisy. However though, and even though Cora starts off trying to kill Daisy, trying to use her powers on Daisy, Daisy does get through to her, and Cora thinks Daisy is a good person. Daisy should not die. Now that pisses off Nathaniel, has him do the same with Cora that he did with Daisy, take her powers for himself, and that basically leads into that final fight that I'm going to talk about later, but also leads to that lighting up of the eyes that we spoke about when breaking down the trailers for this finale. But back on the Zephyr, the Thunderstick has been used, the reference to Season 1 has been used, and we've got Sousa talking about that Area 51 situation, the Chronicoms using one of their own in order to bring about some kind of atomic or nuclear apocalypse, and that will lead Sousa to believe that these Chronicoms, their bodies, could be explosive. Now you would think that they would pull out that one explosive part out of the Chronicoms, strap it on that missile that they do use later on in order to open this big hole in the Chronicom ship, their escape route. However though, they're not the most technical when it comes to these kind of things, and this is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so let's do it in a funny manner as well, which I really loved, duct taping all those Chronicoms to that missile. That was a really good touch. Now we're moments away from being done with the first hour of the finale, even though all of this talk has been mixed between both hours. But the moment that Coulson mentioned a 084, I was thinking, okay, we're about to get Fitz. That was a really beautiful foreshadowing moment. So yeah, they're teleported to the Speakeasy, they meet up with all of these S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. There's talk about the SSR, a reference to Agent Carter. There's talk about the Howling Commandos, a reference to Captain America, the first Avenger. But however, both of them put together are also a reference to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Because if I'm not mistaken, it was the premiere of Season 3 that did include the capture of Whitehall at the hands of Agent Carter and ex-members of the Howling Commandos that we did see before on Captain America, the first Avenger. Now for multiple reasons, and even though the name has not been mentioned, I could promise you that the lady agent that shot John Garett was actually Victoria Hand, because one, the hair color, the looks, the eyeglasses, that was all very obvious. Two, there was the fact that May gave her that look, the I know you from before look, the one right before the calm down empathetic look that she gave her, like moments later. Not only though is Victoria Hand a reference to Season 1 because she is a character out of Season 1, the whole situation is a reference to Season 1. I mean, shooting John Garett, she was shot on Season 1 by Grant Ward in the presence of John Garett, and in order to free John Garett, so it's kind of insinuated that the order was given there by John Garett. But okay though, a lot of things that were written for this season were not really written haphazardly. Enoch being left behind for the 30s and 40s until the early 50s, that was all about him preparing a lot of things, dropping pieces of tech all over the place, making sure that that room is ready with the time machine bit. Gonna talk about that in a moment. But yeah though, he did it all with the help of Koenig. Very good to hear the name of Koenig once again on the finale of the series. He's just been there helping the team for so many seasons over so many years, so definitely worth the mention. But all of these pieces make up the 084. Simmons is the only one who knows how to operate the 084, not because she remembers the details, but because it looks familiar. She doesn't even understand why she remembers this or why she knows this. Throughout the whole thing, she is mumbling, holy matrimony, 2 become 1, and then 3 become 1, early foreshadowing for the daughter that is to appear later on. But this, though, is where all the references to the Marvel Cinematic Universe pour in. So number 1, we've got a time travel device that looks like the time travel device from Avengers Endgame, the piece that leads into the quantum realm. Number 2, we've got Fitz arriving through time in that helmet, one that makes him reminiscent of the Avengers on Avengers Endgame. Number 3, he talks about seeing all the possible outcomes. That's very Doctor Strange out of Avengers Infinity War. Number 4, we've got him flat out mentioning the quantum realm, and then us actually seeing the quantum realm in the episode. Number 5, we've got him explaining time travel, explaining alternate timelines and how they branch out of the main timeline in the very same manner that the one explained it to Bruce Banner in 2012 on Avengers Endgame. Number 6, the way he introduces the idea of the quantum realm to them is kind of like what Scott Lang did, when he came out of the quantum realm, headed to the Avengers headquarters and met up with Steve Rogers and Natasha Romanoff. Number 7, the decision to bring back the ships to the original timeline, the Chronicom ships. It does match up with the bringing back of the Thanos ship to 2024. It was done over there by Nebula, but nonetheless, it is the same idea over here. Number 8, the mention of a nebula. Daisy at the end of the episode, we're heading for a nebula. I think that was a pretty smart way to refer to a character out of the movie side. But these were your references to the movie side of things. The helmet, though, that Fitz was wearing, that's the exact same helmet that Deke was wearing on Season 5, like early Season 5. So we know that the tech was S.H.I.E.L.D. based on the fact that we realized later on that this was originally a S.H.I.E.L.D. base, the Lighthouse, but now we also know that it was created by Fitz. So as much as Deke likes to steal tech, he's just stealing tech from his grandfather. On the subject of Fitz as well, there's no old man Fitz or, dead Fitz. This Fitz is pretty much alive, this Fitz is pretty much young, a few years older, but not old man Fitz in the kind of sense that some people were promoting. But right before Fitz made it, though, to the Speakeasy, made it through time, we've got Simmons remembering bits and pieces. I now pronounce you. That's what Coulson said. She's referring to the 100th episode of the series, her getting married to Fitz at the very end. Coulson officiating, you were all there. That's pretty much a reference to everyone else, all the members of the team. They were all there for the Fitz-Simmons wedding. But that brings us, though, to the 13th and final hour of the season and of the series in general, and the very first few moments of that final hour, that's pretty much all about giving us an emotional moment, starting the goodbyes. The talk about the team being together for one last time. Fitz knows it, everyone else starts realizing it, and it starts sinking in, and there are a lot of speechless people on that scene. And we've got Deke deciding to sacrifice himself, stay behind. He's gonna be a god in that timeline, so I'm not worried about him. He's already the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. as of that moment that the others have left this timeline. The goodbye moment over comms between him and Mac, that was pretty good, that was pretty solid. That felt real for so many reasons, including the fact that you could tell that Mac over there was very thankful for what Deke did with him, in the 80s, getting him through the death of his parents. Jemma's talk about, staying up with her father, looking at the stars. This has repeated so many times over the course of this episode, but it is a reference to Inescapable. The first time we've listened to that story, we get a lot of flashbacks over this final hour to what happened with Fitz and Simmons over the course of those years. So they basically escaped the Lighthouse, teleported into the Zephyr, asked Piper and Flint to wait for them, they dropped them somewhere, they traveled into space, found another solar system, spent their time over there on board of the Zephyr, started researching time travel, working the kinks out, which made this guy, Fitz over here, into the Tony Stark and the Hank Pym of this series. Jemma got pregnant, they decided to spend some time together, have some kind of life, that's why they spent a few years over there, and then they went back to the same moment, met back up with Piper and Flint, promised them a thank you present for protecting Fitz while he was doing his time travel. They didn't really know that they were protecting his daughter, but nonetheless, they promised them that. We're gonna get back to that present at the very end. But Fitz gets in, Simmons goes ahead to rescue the team as at the end of Season 6. The Zephyr out of the end of Season 6 is used as a distraction in order for the Zephyr out of Season 7 to pretty much dock into the Chronicom ship. So this is why they had to go to that alternate timeline. Another thing about this though is all the conversations that went down with that scene with the white walls, the white room, and the white floors, out of last week's episode with Simmons. It wasn't really as a lot of people expected, it's a memory happening in real time, in her head. No, that wasn't it. The disappearance of the details of that room was about Fitz kind of disappearing in her memories, digging deeper until he fully disappears, because we do see that scene repeated, a part of it, on this week's episode, and it's pretty much a regular scene without the white walls in the white room. But here comes the big battle though. The Zephyr does use the distraction in order to dock into the Chronicom ship. Nathaniel, as expected, has got Cora's powers. Nathaniel, as expected, does end up having this major fight with Daisy, something that we've been expecting from the very beginning of the season. Now, the outcome of this fight has two things that are major references to Season 5. The first one is Daisy floating in space. That's pretty much Graviton floating in space as at the end of Season 5. And then the second one is the big explosion, the shattering of that ship. And that's pretty much the destroyed Earth out of Season 5. But elsewhere on the ship, we've got Sybil capturing Coulson. We've got her talking about him being reassigned, stripping him of everything except for his Chronicom parts. Now, I definitely got a Hydra vibe out of that moment. Your compliance will be rewarded kind of vibe. Of course, this is not exactly the same, but the season started with Hydra, the series started with Hydra. Hydra's been there throughout the entire series, almost every season, except for Season 6. So yeah, I got that vibe. Possibly I'm wrong, but I've got the feeling this is akin to the brainwashing done by Hydra to their new agents. But okay though, the fact that Alia, Fitz and Simmons' daughter, did grow in space for some time in kind of a dystopian world, or leaving a dystopian world behind, back on Earth, that was definitely something that she had in common with that other daughter, the one that they had in that dystopian timeline out of Season 5. Like I said at the beginning, one of my favorite moments on this episode is the moment that May drops in and calls herself the Cavalry, knocking Sybil out. I did love how Cora kind of had her redeeming moment on this episode. I was expecting it from the very beginning, and then I started doubting it, and then I started expecting it again, watching the trailer and the promotional photos for this episode. I did love that sneaky reference to Enoch, when Yo-Yo asked those Chronicoms who were supposed to attack them in the Lighthouse, friends or foes, and that one Chronicom goes, "Friends, as we have always been." That was a beautiful reference to Enoch, really. But okay, we're getting closer to the end of this video. I'm dreading it because this might be the last time I'm talking Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on this channel, but nonetheless, let's talk that ending. So number one, we've got this time jump and they're meeting, holograms of their personas are meeting in the Speakeasy. Number two, we've got Melinda May, a lecturer in the S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy, except that now it's not the S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy, it's the Coulson Academy. Now the thing I loved about this is twofold. First of all, Flint is a student over there, so Flint is sticking around and Flint is going to become an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. The second one is this pays a certain tribute to Coulson, because last season, when we were watching last season, it was mentioned clearly, this was a dream of Coulson's, bringing the S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy back. So bringing it back while giving it the name the Coulson Academy is one of the best touches on the finale. But number three, Daisy, Cora, and Daniel Sousa are in space and they form their own kind of sword, probably under the supervision of S.H.I.E.L.D., probably under the supervision of Mac. However though, and to be coy about it and to not mention or use the name sword, Daisy does relay how Sousa keeps calling it the Astral Ambassadors. Number 4, another piece of reference to the fact that Sousa is a man out of time, is Daisy talking about having gotten him a typewriter as of recently. Number 5, the helicarrier is back and Mac is on board of it, wearing that trench coat, so he looks a lot like Nick Fury over there, of course without the eye patch. Number 6, Yo-Yo is on the ground doing missions with the help of her own team, and this team includes 2 people, Piper and Davis. Now how is Davis back? Yes, Davis died at the hands of Izel during the events of Season 6, but nonetheless, Davis is back because he is an LMD, and he is the present that Piper requested, the thank you present that Fitz promised her when they left her protecting their daughter. Number 7, out of that scene, there's a code 136. That's the number of episodes that the series has had in total, so it is kind of a play on the I Love You 3000 bit out of Avengers Endgame. Number 8, they do talk about how they missed that little weirdo, Deke, so they're wondering what's going on in his timeline. I wished really that they would give us this post-credit scene with Deke, but I expected some messy timeline. I mean, imagine Deke is the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. in that timeline. Imagine that someday Fury is going to report to Deke. That's going to be one hell of a timeline. But there is that final moment of the episode, the package that Max sent Coulson. It's a car key, and the car is Lola, a second coming of Lola, but nonetheless Lola, and we've missed Lola. It is a beautiful ending for the series. It is a beautiful reference at the very last moment to Season 1, to how it all begun. Now that said, I know some people are still upset about the fact that this did not tie in with the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe, the movie side. I don't think the movie side is superior, so I don't think it's really important to kind of connect to that. But nonetheless, they did leave the door open in case they want to bring these characters back, in case Marvel Studios does want to bring these characters back. You've got all the talk about connecting timelines, about the quantum realm, so that is a door that is open. They're not really in the original timeline, like the original Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline. This is the timeline that was created as a result of the ending of Season 5 and heading into Season 6. So it is a timeline that never saw the events leading up to the snap, or at least did not see the snap itself. A timeline that gives us closure. However, it is a timeline connected to all those other timelines, because this is becoming the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse rather than the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So there's always hope they will come back. This is the way to tie in. I consider this a major tie-in actually. But that said as well, my work here is done. This might be my last video of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Thank you so much guys for all the viewerships of these videos. Thank you so much for all the discussions, the beautiful discussions, both in the comments to all my videos and on Discord. And I know I'm gonna see most, if not all of you commenting on my other videos. I'm gonna enjoy it as much as I enjoyed your comments on these videos. However though, it is the end of an era with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So thank you so much for all the participation. You've made my viewership of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. a lot more enjoyable. But do let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode of the finale of the series. Let me know if I missed anything. It was too much to review, so I probably missed something here or there. Let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it one of those much appreciated likes, subscribing to this channel, and make sure while you're at it to enable notifications in order to get updates whenever I upload a new video, publish a new community post, or start a new live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in to this one. Stay safe and have a great day.